Welcome to the Stokastic MLB Strategy Show. I'm your host, Neil Orfield. You can find me on Twitter at PlayerQDFS. Actually, I should do this out of order today. Our sponsor today is Sorare MLB, as usual. I'm your host, Neil Orfield. And today, Adam is out, so we have a special guest joining us. This is Matthew Belman at Fantasy Tips Matt on Twitter. And if you don't know Matthew, just know that you are in good hands. I just tweeted this out, Matthew, a little introduction for you, for the people. The 11th ranked MLB DFS player in the world is here with us. He's a hand builder, so a little bit different than me and Adam in this sense. And I just picked up a few screenshots, which actually were sent to me by Tommy Stokey, editor-in-chief at Stokastic, sent me a few of Matthew's screenshots. He was excited to have Matthew on today. So yeah, 50,000 there, 12,500, 100,000, just a few of your recent MLB screenshots, Matthew. Is your season going pretty well?
My season is going pretty well. First off, can we talk about that introduction real quick? Thank you very much. Really happy to be here. Excited to talk the MLB DFS slate with you for sure. And yeah, it's been a pretty good year. MLB DFS is always a grind with multiple slates a day sometimes, but I love it. MLB is my favorite sport. My initials are MLB, so I was kind of born to play MLB DFS, if you will.
Beautiful. Kitten Collect says, oh shit, this Matt dude knows his shit. Got a plus 900 Machado home run call off this dude. I swear he sees the future. Yeah, you want somebody who can see the future. I can't see the future, so I have to just use the tools. But Matthew, you're in good hands with Matthew. People, and somebody was in chat yesterday asking when you're going to do content again, because they used to watch your videos, and you were saying, oh, I don't know, and then you show up today. So happy to have you on, Matthew.
I am very happy to be here. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say I wanted to start the show like on time so that I could forever blame Adam. Like tell everybody, oh, he's the reason we always start 5 minutes late. I did start a little bit early today, so I can kind of go with that. Like it's Adam's fault, but usually no, it's usually my fault that we're running late. You and I got off a little bit quicker though, just because we met beforehand a little bit, tried to set up a little bit. But are you ready to talk? Do you want to give your overarching thoughts on this slate to start, Matthew, if you have any, or if we just jump in game by game?
First off, definitely tough shoes to fill with Adam not being here, but generally we see things very eye to eye. So a lot of this stuff is going to be similar to you guys. The tools at Stokastic are the best around. So a lot of the stuff is going to be based on that. As far as the slate goes tonight, it's a really, really fun one. I was mentioning it to you before the show started. You've got a bunch of good to really good pitchers, a couple guys you might consider aces. None of them are in particularly great spots. You've got some gas cans that we definitely want to pick on. And then you've got a Coors game with two of the worst pitchers you'll see in Coors. So it's a fun slate to break down, a lot of places to go. You get pretty much every team on the slate except for a couple being a Tuesday night. So I'm excited to break this down, man.
Yeah, I'm excited to break it down with you as well. Fun to have somebody new in here. Salty Old Man says, "Oh shit, when did Matt make the big time?" Nice. Yeah, I'm excited to be talking with Matt. I mean, obviously, I love doing the show with Adam, but it's always fun to mix it up every once in a while. And we've got a 12 gamer, and yeah, as you were saying, kind of an interesting one. Like it's going to be a different decision today with Coors being, as you said, with two horrible pitchers in Coors. I'm guessing the ownership's going to be there, but we'll go game by game. So we'll talk about that one once we get there. Let's start it off with the Yankees at Blue Jays. Domingo Germán on the mound for the Yankees. Kevin Gausman on the mound for the Jays. Any interest in these pitchers?
Definitely interest in Gausman here. Could make the case he's the top pitcher on the slate. Obviously, Clayton Kershaw would probably argue that. Justin Verlander as well. Gausman has been elite this year, though. Aside from the one start where he got lit up at Boston, which actually wasn't on a main slate, he's been one of the best pitchers in MLB DFS this year. Do I like facing the Yankees? No. Their lineup's still a little bit watered down. No Stanton, no Donaldson. Judge is clearly back, as evidenced by his 2 bombs last night, but Gausman's price tag is fair at 10-7. Adam talks a lot about how floors for pitchers is based in Ks. You're not going to really get a higher floor than Gausman here. An elite pitcher, second in our top 2 pitcher, and coming in about with that same ownership. I like him quite a bit here. I think he's one of the top pitchers on the slate.
All right, so you like Kevin Gausman quite a bit. Arnold Lane says, wild background there, Matt. Paul Mee says, Tips is in a fantasy vape ether cloud. Yeah, I'd say that's a pretty good description of that background there. All right, any interest in the offenses here, Matt?
First, let me talk about Germán real quick. Don't have the same amount of interest in Germán as I do Gausman. top two pitcher 5.3% of the time, not getting any ownership, coming in less than 1% owned. Really, really tough to go there on this slate in a matchup against Toronto. One of the offenses you really don't want to pick pitchers against, especially on big slates. So not a ton of interest there. As far as the offenses go, not really interested in the Yankees. Too big of a slate to want to pick on Gausman. As far as the Jays go, yeah, I'm always interested in Toronto. Herman is good. He was a guy that came up very heralded, went through some injuries, has looked decent this year, and Toronto doesn't rank too highly on our top stack tool. But anytime you have a lineup with Vladimir Guerrero, Bo Bichette, George Springer, even a guy like Brandon Belt has started to see the ball better recently. I can certainly get on board with the Toronto stack. Not going to be a priority for me like they were last night, which was a mistake. But I could certainly see going there, especially if you're a guy who max enters.
Would you call it a mistake or just it didn't work out? I mean, it seemed like a good idea at the time.
Yeah, true. Hindsight is always 2020. I mean, so many offenses went off last night. I guess really for me, I was like, when I woke up, I really liked Toronto. And when they decided they weren't going to start Brito and start Cordero instead, sure. My interest should have waned a little bit just because it was more of a bullpen game. That said, you're right. I mean, it's still the Blue Jays. Just because they didn't hit well doesn't mean it was a bad call. Thank you.
Right. Yeah. You did a good job, Matt. You chose the right team there. I know as a hand builder, it's extra pressure on you as a hand builder. For me, sometimes I use the optimizer. I'm like, I don't even know who I have in some of my lineups. But for a hand builder, you're making those decisions, and I think you made a good one there.
Go ahead.
I was just going to ask you how you would rank the four sides of the game, so you can throw that in there as well.
For sure. Gausman easily number one. Gausman the number one, head and shoulders. Blue Jays 2. Probably Herman 3 and Yankees 4, but Herman and the Yankees are a distant 3 and 4.
Okay. Sounds good. All right. Second game of the slate, we've got Seattle at Boston. Luis Castillo on the mound for the Mariners. Nick Pivetta for the Red Sox. Any interest in either of these pitchers, Matt?
No, on Pivetta for sure. Castillo, you can make a similar case for Castillo as you can Kevin Gausman. I trust Castillo more personally, and the weather's blowing out in Boston. It's blowing out to right center at 10 to 15 miles per hour. Really tough for me to want to plant my flag on Castillo here. Normally with Luis Castillo, and he's on a full slate like this, it's rare you'll find him outside the top 5 and top 2 pitcher. Today, he's well outside the top 5, barely making it into the top 10 if I'm doing my math correctly. Might even be number 11. I think that tells you all you need to know. I'm not all that interested in spending 10K on Castillo here.
All right. I think that's totally fair. He's in Boston, obviously a sort of tough matchup. What about the bats in this game?
Seattle's getting a lot of love, and it makes sense. They had a really good game last night. Cal Raleigh homered twice. They're not expensive. They are coming right now. They're third in our top stack tool. They're actually getting the most ownership on the slate, though. They're coming in with slightly higher ownership than Cincinnati. That's kind of wild to me. I mean, I get it. Pavetta's not great. I mean, he hasn't been very good at all, actually. But in Boston, personally, I'm not going to be looking to use a chalky Seattle stack when there's so many other good offenses on the board. How do you see this?
Yeah, so I haven't looked closely at it. I'm just reading comments on Twitter. I mean, how do I see this? It is, I think I would like to play either. I mean, it looks like a good spot. We're in Boston here. I always like playing offenses in Boston, Seattle. When you have stronger offenses against mediocre pitching, Seattle's going to appeal to me. Just going over owned. So probably if I were hand building like you are, I probably wouldn't choose Seattle as my first lineup, first team in, maybe sure. More of a secondary stack. But with that high of ownership, it's a little bit hard for me to love them despite 10%. They're third in terms of top stack odds on the entire slate. So it's hard I don't want to write them off completely because they're obviously one of the offenses that could just completely go off on this slate in Fenway.
Sure.
But the ownership is there.
Kind of like Cincinnati last night. I know Adam was talking about how he didn't want to, get to where the field was, but he didn't want to cross them out. And I guess it all depends on, how many lineups you're making. For me, if I'm making 10 to 15 lineups tonight in high stakes, I won't completely fade Seattle, but I won't use them as my top stack. I'm not overly excited about them here, in Fenway against Pivetta. I get it. It's a good spot. there's other offenses I like more. If it burns me, it burns me.
I think that's a totally reasonable approach. Did you already go over? Do you have any interest in Boston against Castillo?
You know, again, kind of like the Yankees against Gaussman, it's tougher. It's tough to get there on a big slate. The one thing I'll say, though, is that I have more interest in them against Castillo than I do the Yankees against Gaussman for a couple of reasons. One, whether this be biased or not, I trust Gaussman a little bit more. Two, I think the Boston offense, given the Yankees' injuries right now, it's probably a tad better. And secondly, you've got that weather that we just talked about. In Toronto, you're not getting any of that weather. In Boston, you've got the weather blowing out. Castillo has been good this year, but he was really good to start the year. You look back at his past 4 games, excuse me, and I'm not trying to be a game log chaser or anything like that, but he has not surpassed 18 DK points in any of them.
Yeah, so maybe he's not quite right or something.
Maybe he's not quite right. Maybe Boston is going a little bit under-owned here. The counter to that would be you don't just need Boston to get to Castillo a little bit. You're going to need them to outscore Cincinnati, Colorado, all these other really good offenses. That's where I probably wouldn't get there. If you want to one-off a Devers, a Yoshida, those guys make sense.
Yep. And Stephen Lewis says Sox bullpen was bad last night. Paul Me says, and Boston bullpen is trash and tired. So maybe some reasons that people are going to go to the Mariners and good reasons to go to the Mariners if you're playing against worse pitching.
And they're affordable.
Yeah, and affordable. So it makes sense that they're going to be chalky. That's the hard thing. It's like not my favorite spot to go just because they look over-owned according to the top stack school, but certainly there are reasons to want to place in Seattle.
This is another point that, I wish got discussed more. They were very, very popular last night, even more so in high stakes. So I think, the higher dollar you get, kind of the more chalky the chalk gets. So a lot of times that means it's good chalk. A lot of times that means that, there might be a place to pivot in there. Everything's just slate dependent.
Yep, of course. And then how would you rank the 4 sides of this game, Matt?
Got to say Mariners number 1. After that, it's tough. Castillo / Boston are going to be 2 and 3. The Red Sox bats, probably Castillo 2, Boston 3, and then Pivetta distant 4.
Okay. Sounds good.
Pavetta's probably the lowest ranked of the 8 sides we've done so far between the Yankees and all of them.
Oh, you want to keep doing this rolling? You're going to give me a new update on all of them?
I don't want to do that. But as soon as I said that, I thought about that. Yeah, bad idea. I take all that back. Forget I said it.
All right. You didn't say anything. All right. Next game, we've got Tampa Bay at New York Mets. Jalen Beeks on the mound for the Rays. Justin Verlander for the Mets. Any interest in these pitchers, Matt?
This is another one. I'm a huge Verlander fan. I think he's one of the best pitchers of all time. I'm a huge Cleveland Indians / Guardians fan, so I watched him terrorize us for years. Really, really tough spot, though, against Tampa. I mean, I know Adams talked about this a ton. Their offense is just loaded with good bats. I got bit by them twice recently and using Garrett Cole against them. So hard to want to spend full price on Verlander here. He's only been back for like 2 starts, excuse me. So I had interest in Verlander, but he's not like at the top of the list for me.
Okay. What about the bats in this game?
And then as far as the Jalen Beeks side goes, I'm pretty sure they're going to be bringing in Yanni Chirinos as a long reliever, or one of them is going to be pitching. Yeah, I'm seeing Chirinos as the long reliever. He's a righty as opposed to Beeks as a lefty. I guess pretty comparable pitchers as far as like how good they are, so it doesn't really make much of a difference. I'm not interested in either of those pitchers on this slate. I think you can make a case for the Mets bats here. Neither of those pitchers are anything special. They don't stand out as anything special on this slate, with a bunch of good offenses facing weaker pitchers, but we know the Mets have power. Right now, they're coming in with a 3.2% chance of being the top stack, only 2.4% ownership. Yeah, I could see getting to guys like Alonso, Lindor. I mean, they're not going to get any love, and they always have upside. Not a spot that sticks out to me, though.
Okay, and then we just got a question from Andrew Martinez. What does the Tampa Bay stack look like? Are there any particular spots of Tampa Bay? If you were going to go to a Tampa Bay spot, do you have any particular players that you think you'd like to go to there?
Yeah, so the 2 guys that I would probably like to get to the most are Wander Franco and Brandon Lau. The problem is Franco is the most expensive shortstop on the slate. So not only are you picking on Verlander, but you're paying premium to do so. Makes it really, really tough to get to Tampa. I will say, in our top stack tool, they have a 2.5% chance of being the top stack, similar to the Mets. Only 0.6% ownership. A lot of that comes from not only the fact that they're facing Verlander, they're really expensive. They're damn near impossible to get to on this slate. That said, we just saw the Dodgers go nuts in a similar spot last night. Even with all those offenses going off, the winner of the $15 lucky guesses, I believe, had a full Dodger stack. So that just shows you, I know that probably hurts your feelings going against your Twins and Pablo Lopez, but it just goes to what Adam always says. The Dodgers, the Rays. I know he likes to throw Baltimore in there. I don't really think so, but the Dodgers and the Rays, you can stack them any day. And with the amount of power they have, I mean, you could end up seeing a winning night. That said, it's not for me. I'm more likely to get to Verlander here. Probably just a spot that I cross off and don't get to either side and hope it's one of those, Verlander allows 3 runs. No one on Tampa really goes off. Obviously, another point that you guys talk about a lot, whenever you've got this much talent on both sides and neither side is getting a ton of ownership, makes sense to go overweight. Verlander is getting decent amount of love, though, so it's worth considering. He's probably where I'd go first over the Tampa Bats.
Okay, so not as interested in the Tampa Bats. Did you mention, are you going to play any Mets bats here?
Yeah, I talked about the Mets a little bit. I see you're already following true to form and not listening to what I'm saying, but that makes me feel good. That makes me feel a part of the show.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, the Mets bats are in play here. They're kind of mid-range in terms of top stack tool. I respect Chirinos as a pitcher. I know he missed all of last year with an injury, so he's not a guy I look at and I'm like, I need to pick on him, but it's MLB DFS. They've got good bats in their lineup. You want to take a shot on them? I get it.
Sure. And how would you rank the 4 sides of this game?
This is one where I'd probably go Verlander, Mets, Tampa, and then the pitcher's a distant fourth, kind of like the other ones we've talked about. I think you could the bats. I think the Mets are in a better spot. I think Tampa is always a high tournament team just because of the year they've had.
Okay. The other thing that I was going to mention is as we were talking about that lucky guesses lineup, I believe he also had a 0 in that lineup. So the rare, like you see a 0 in the actual winning lineup last night in the Lourdes Field contest on DraftKings.
I think that just goes to show how low owned his players were that went off. I know Muncy was really, really low owned. His pitchers nutted. I know Waka was insane, almost had a no-hitter. So, yeah, you don't usually see a 0, and especially in those big contests, especially when so many offenses went off last night. I can't remember the last slate where 3 teams batted against the position player, which is what happened last night.
Yeah, absolutely nuts. Whenever that happens on a slate, it just kind of breaks the whole slate wide open if you have those
nuts.
Teams.
As I told you before, I was heavy on St. Louis against Peralta. I liked the way they looked coming into that game. Whenever you had a spot like that, you're supposed to have a really good night. Had a decent night, but with Atlanta going off, the Dodgers, like we talked about, other offenses, one-offs going insane, Aaron Judge, etc. This is part of the grind that is MLB DFS.
I just remember that I talked about St. Louis on the show last night as an offense that I liked, and maybe if I were not doing a show, I would have thought about getting into some St. Louis. Obviously, did not get there, but I guess I kind of missed out there. All right, so we made it through 3 of the 12 games. Now I just put the link in chat, so you know what's happening now. We're going to talk just briefly about our sponsor, Sorare MLB, which is, of course, a collection of digital trading cards and an NFT-based free-to-play baseball game. This is my lineup right here. This is not a free lineup, the one that I played here, this limited in the limited contest, but you can get free cards when you sign up for Sorare. I just put the link in description if you're interested in trying it out. When you sign up for Sorare, they give you the option of several different common cards that you can choose from within a salary cap. I didn't make good choices there. You should, when you sign up, you should give it at least a little bit of thought. But you can use those cards to enter contests, to enter the common contest where you can win real prizes. You can win some of these limited cards, which are then you can sell those on the marketplace. So I'll show you the upcoming contest here. If you play in these common contests, so again, you get these cards, common cards for free when you sign up. You can win the first 100 places in each contest, win limited cards, which are actually cards that you can sell on the marketplace. So free to enter, you can win real prizes in these common contests. Or if you are, interested in dipping your your whole foot in, maybe beyond the toes, then you can do what I'm doing, which is playing some of these limited contests. These are cards that you can win in contests. Obviously, in all these contests, you can see here, you can win these limited cards, but then you can also buy them on the marketplace. So if you don't want to wait until you've got enough cards to play, you can just buy some cards on the marketplace. Not a whole lot of upfront cost here. I think if you put, I put like $600 in, and I've been fielding somewhat competitive teams, not the best teams out there, but fairly competitive teams. So it doesn't cost a ton to make really good teams week to week in these limited contests. But again, you can start for free if you just want to check it out. You can play some of those common contests. You'll get those cards for free when you sign up at Sorare. Again, if you haven't signed up, use the link that I just put in chat. All right, we will get back to talking about this slate because it is such a large one. Can't spend too much time here. All right.
I will say one quick thing about Sorare. I've heard you
Yep.
talk about a lot. It's the future. So getting in now is probably a good idea. I remember, I believe they were only doing soccer, kind of shortly after COVID happened.
Oh.
Clearly they've branched out, and as you can speak on, it's the future. I don't think much more needs to be said.
I mean, you see the way DraftKings is trying to really push their product of this type.
Yeah.
I think that it's pretty clear that this is the way DFS is going. So this is kind of as you say, a good idea to get in now and kind of beat the crowd to it. Because again, another thing about Sorare is all of these cards you can play every year. So like the Spencer Strider, I have a Spencer Strider relief pitcher card that I bought coming into, which he doesn't have relief pitcher cards this year. So this is from the last year's set, but I can keep playing it year over year for the remainder of his career. So if we think that
that's
Sorare
amazing,
is the future, then yeah, and the cards are relatively cheap right now, so it seems like a good time to get in. But all right, we will keep moving on to Milwaukee at St. Louis. Wade Miley on the mound for the Brewers, Jordan Montgomery for the Cardinals. Any interest in these pitchers, Matt?
Yeah, a lot of interest in Montgomery here. Not the greatest spot in the world against Milwaukee. He's just really cheap compared to the other good pitchers on this slate. Not as high as I thought he'd be as far as top 2 pitcher percentage, but still we're coming in around 9th with a 10.1% chance. I mentioned at the beginning of the show, there's a bunch of good pitchers on this slate, all in pretty tough matchup. Well, you've got Clayton Kershaw with a 23.2% chance of being a top 2 pitcher. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then 8 other guys within like 10 percentage points of that. So it's pretty lumped up in there. Montgomery is the cheapest of those guys, and he's wildly in play for me here.
Wildly in play. All right, that's
a term I used to use when I was doing a lot of writing. Haven't busted it out in a while. It felt good.
I like it. Yeah, I think it works. It works really well here. All right, what about the bats in this game?
So Miley is a guy, and another thing Adam speaks about a lot, not necessarily a guy you want to use in DFS, but not really a guy you want to pick on. Doesn't give up a ton of power. That said, he got hit up by the Dodgers his last start. He started off that game pretty well, and then the Dodgers, which they do to most pitchers, got to him. I'm interested in St. Louis right now. They're red hot. They're coming in with a 3.8% chance of being the top stack, 3.7% ownership. After starting out the year miserable, Nolan Arenado has now homered in 4 straight games, crushes lefties. Guys like Goldschmidt, Tommy Edman leading off, Dylan Carlson batting from the right side, Paul DeYoung, who looks good right now. This is a lineup I'm interested in. Obviously, they did me well last night. I used them a bunch over the weekend. They're hot right now. They started off the season really slow. Certainly interested.
What about the Brewers?
Meh for me on the Brewers.
Yep.
I respect Jordan Montgomery. The Brewers lineup is fine. They're going to have guys that probably get pinch hit for. If you want to take a look at Willy Adames, William Contreras, Yelich looks pretty good right now. Brian Anderson is fine. I'm okay with it, but Montgomery is probably one of my top pitchers on the slate, so I'd much rather get to Montgomery than the Brewers side personally.
All right, well then, with that in mind, how would you rank the 4 sides of the game?
I'm going to go Cards first, Montgomery second, interchangeable. Probably Miley third, Milwaukee fourth.
Matt, I'm being roasted for saying that the screenshots that I posted are recent. I guess some of the screenshots that I posted, you have plenty of recent screenshots, but the ones that apparently
I do.
I put out on
Tommy
Twitter.
asked me. I thought when Tommy asked me to send, he wanted different years, so I sent him one from this year, last
Oh,
year, and yeah, I was going to correct you when I said that, but I'm
oh.
new to the show, so I didn't want to correct you just yet. Yeah, there's definitely one from like 3 weeks ago that's on there. I think the other two are from previous years,
I mean, you
though.
just won 100,000 like a couple weeks ago, right? So that's
This
on
is
there for
true.
sure. I just assumed that Tommy just went through your most recent screenshots and just sent me those ones, but apparently no. There's some that are quite old in there, but he does also have recent screenshots. Those are just not the ones that were sent to me.
And to be honest, I go back and forth on the screenshot game. So since I started doing more writing for Stokastic, I was starting to post them a little bit more. But I've had plenty of wins where I have not posted anything just because I don't think there's a need to post every time you win something personally.
So I love screenshot culture in general. I like to see people winning, but I also
Same,
I think that it can be overkill at times. So like I got to a
for
point where I
sure.
wasn't posting my big screenshots when I was on like my best year when I was winning frequently. I got to a
I
point where I was like
had
I'm not going to post every time I win something. But nowadays I'm like I'll post if I win $1. It's like just going rough.
for sure. I had, I was kind of out of the screenshot phase for a while, and then I had a great NBA season, and one of the first weeks of NBA, I qualified for the Fantasy Basketball World Championship for like the third time. My wife was like, you gotta post this, you gotta post this." So I posted it. I got nice reactions, so that I've continued. I continue to do that a little bit after wins. Um, I agree with you though. I like it, but there's a time and a place for it, kind of like with everything else in life.
Yeah, but what a lot of people also don't realize is that screenshots are the best marketing. So like once you are working, like you're in the content game, you
Yep,
kind of need to post your screenshots, whether you want to or not. It's part of the game. Um,
it's verbatim what Tommy told me. So yeah.
yeah, exactly. Just something that you kind of need to do. All right, so we already did the four sides of the Milwaukee St. Louis game. I see that we had Steven has started playing the common card, says it's not bad. You can do a daily card swap to make your team better. I always forget to do the daily card swap, but yeah, that's one way that I could be improving my awful common team. And Paul Me points out that this will eliminate ChatGPT. It'll at least maybe slow down the rise of ChatGPT. Kill in DFS. We can dream.
I thought
But
that
then
was a
also
great conversation yesterday.
the ChatGPT is going to kill DFS. I mean, yeah, it's a really
Yeah,
interesting
I
conversation.
do.
That who knows? Go ahead.
I kind of agreed with your point though towards the very end. The lineup generator is basically doing that right now. Now again,
Right,
I'm not very technologically savvy, so I don't know all the ins and outs of ChatGPT or AI for that matter.
right.
But based on my thought process, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, no, I think that it makes sense as well. But I haven't started using ChatGPT. I have no idea how long we have before it becomes a real problem. I guess we'll see. I also want to just point out Chinwang says Maddie Goat. M the Great says I like this guy. So yeah, I'm enjoying the conversation with Matt as well. All right, we will move on to. I'm not going to give you time to respond to that. Move on to Atlanta at Texas. We've got Jared Schuster on the mound for the Braves. Dane Dunning for the Rangers. Any interest in these pitchers, Matt?
No interest in these pitchers here. Two
Perfect.
of two of the weaker pitchers on the slate. No interest. We can move along quick.
Love it. Love it. Then let's move along to the bats. How much interest in the bats?
A good amount. I like both sides here. Atlanta's obviously the better offense. They're coming in with a 5.8% chance of being the top stack, 5.7% ownership. You're going to see that with a lot of teams, with Coors on this slate and the Mariners getting a ton of ownership. Basically, every other team is going to be either owned where they should be or a little bit under-owned. You're not going to have many other teams be over-owned, and that's one of the beauties of Coors slates.
True.
If you don't play Coors, assuming Coors doesn't go off of Coors. I like Atlanta here. They're one of the best offenses in baseball. They showed it last night. Acuna homered, Riley homered, Ozuna homered off of Sandy Leon at the end of the game. They put up 12 runs. That's what the Braves can do. They're going to be in play on any slate they're on. Tonight is no exception. I actually like Texas a lot in tournaments, probably even more than Atlanta.
Okay.
4.0% chance of being the top stack, only coming in with a 1.9% ownership. One of the highest leveraged top stacks on the slate. They might actually be the top. I'm looking right now. They're actually, them and Tampa are the two top leverage stacks. They are a little bit expensive up top, especially if Corey Seager's back tonight, which I'm not sure is going to be the case. But they've got value back to the bottom to even it out. I have not been impressed with Jared Schuster's stuff. I think Texas is wildly in play here in tournaments. As of right now, if I were making a single entry lineup, they would be in high consideration for me.
Sounds to me like you're a fairly contrarian and exploitative DFS player. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, definitely, especially in MLB. I think that ownership and being contrarian gets overblown, to be honest, especially in sports like basketball where the projections really matter. It's so projectable. Playing the chalk is just what you need to do, and then getting different in a couple other spots.
Yeah.
Baseball is just a completely different animal, though. With the variance you have in hitters, I've heard you guys talk about pitchers a lot, and I'm fully of your mindset. I do not mind jamming in chalk pitchers. If I like the chalk pitchers, I'll jam them in. The variance just isn't there with pitchers. Last night you saw it a little bit. Sure, you'll see it occasionally. The variance comes from hitters and low-owned hitters. Last night, for example, Nolan Gorman was 2% owned. He was one of the best hitters on the slate. So, yeah, I like to be contrarian as far as my hitting goes. That doesn't mean I want to reinvent the wheel, however. I think that there's being contrarian and then there's being in an island, like, by yourself.
Sure.
When I first started doing this, when Kershaw was at his peak, I remember someone was bugging me. Why don't we want to stack against Kershaw? Why don't we want to stack against Kershaw? No one's going to do it. Everyone's going to play Kershaw. And it's kind of like the point I made about Boston against Castillo. Like, what does it look like if they get to Kershaw there? Like, what, do they score 3 runs? I mean, it's highly unlikely that they're hitting a bunch of home runs, which is what you need to win in DFS.
Yep, that's a good point. Ultimately, it comes down to, did you score a lot of points? And you're usually not going to score a lot of points stacking against the ace on the slate if it is a good enough ace. So that's a very good point. All right, how would you rank the 4 sides of this Atlanta-Texas game?
Texas number 1, Atlanta number 2, probably Dunning 3, and then Schuster 4. If I were to play one of these pitchers in tournaments, it would be Dunning. He has good stuff. He was traded from the White Sox in God, I can't remember what deal right now. That's going to kill me. But he was a highly regarded prospect, and I wouldn't get there today against Atlanta, but I'd get to him over Schuster personally.
Okay, sounds good. All right, next game on the slate, we've got the Cubs at the Astros. Justin Steele on the mound for the Cubs. Christian Javier for the Astros. Any interest in either of these pitchers, Matt?
This is definitely one where I hate to say this on an MLB slate, but this is probably a game where I more or less cross off. Neither pitcher is good enough for me to want to get there on this slate. Steele has been very good this year. Not really excited about using a lefty in Houston. He's also kind of pricey. He is 9,500. That's going to be a no for me, dog, on that. As far as Christian Javier goes, yeah, I get it. He's actually pulling a ton of ownership, coming in as the highest owned pitcher on the slate. I like him. The matchup is fine against the Cubs. We just saw them get to Valdez last night, though. I think that in cash games, he's certainly one of the guys you want to look at. For me, I think he's going to fall behind like the Gaussmans, the Montgomerys. We haven't talked about Zach Wheeler yet. For 400 cheaper, I prefer Wheeler over Javier, but I mean, I get it, certainly. He's a good pitcher in a good spot. He's not too expensive. I think there's, like I said, about 8 pitchers you can look at on this slate and feel pretty good with any of them.
And it sounds like you're not that interested in the bats either.
No, not interested in the bats here. I mean, Houston against a lefty, sure, but their lineup has fallen off a little bit, it seems, this year. Jose Abreu has been a nightmare. Maybe he starts to turn it around, but would like to see it first. And then, of course, the 2 best bats for Houston are probably Tucker and, of course, Alvarez, and they're both lefty. So not the spot I want to get to Houston here. And then I don't want to pick on Javier.
Okay. How would you rank the 4 sides of the game?
Javier, Steele, Houston, Chicago.
Perfect. All right. So we made it through 6 games now, I believe. Let me double check that. Yeah, we made it through the first 6 games. So we are halfway through the slate. So it's perfect time to take just a brief look at Lineup Generator. New product out here. We are very excited about it. And for actually, no, I guess the $4.50 deal is over. You can no longer get it for half off, but it's still just $9. $9 a week. Really great product, premium product. That's again just $9 a week. And I'm just going to go through and make some lineups. I'll do what kind of stack types do you like to do?
I think that when you're talking about DK, you're either doing 5-3, 5-2, or 5X. Since I hand build, I don't set rules like that. So
Sure.
if I come across like a 4-4 I like, I'll play it. I think that rules, as one would say, are meant to be broken. I try not to, put myself in a box. And as I said earlier, everything is slate dependent. So normally most of my lineups will be 5-3, 5-2, or 5X. But I'll also occasionally have a 4-3, a 4-2-2. I'll mix it up a little bit.
All right, so we'll do all stack types and just see what it gives us.
Yeah.
Since you're willing to go, and what do you think? Should we go balance lineups? I feel like we might get a lot of cores, but should we take a look at what they look like if we do balance lineups?
Yeah, I'd
All
like
right.
to see balanced.
All right, let's see some balanced lineups. All right, we're gonna not lock in any pitchers. Do you agree with that take? No
Yeah, for
locking
sure.
pitchers. All right, so we're not
No
locking
locking
in anybody.
pitchers.
All right, so the first lineup that we see here, not a huge surprise. We get a full-on core stack here. Looks like this is a 5-3 Cincinnati, Colorado. Or no, maybe this is a 4-4 stack. Colorado and Cincinnati, both Coors teams in this lineup. Clayton Kershaw and Jordan Montgomery in the pitcher spots. Kershaw at 25% ownership, Montgomery 22%. A lot of fairly chalky bats here, but then we've got Nick Senzel at just 6%. I guess he's the only one under 10% in the entire lineup. What do you think of this lineup, Matt?
I like it. It's probably not my favorite lineup in the world just because both offenses are getting a lot of love. And for me, it's not about like being duped because that's never going to happen in baseball, really. And the individual ownership on players normally never gets too high where that's a concern for me. Obviously, with McLean here still at 2K, we'll talk about that when we get to the Reds game. But for me, it's just like if Colorado and Cincinnati both go off, like you're not guaranteed anything. Like, yeah,
Right.
you might be guaranteed a cash because there's so many games on this slate. But for me, and this is kind of something that I really try to practice what I preach, like I want when my teams go off for me to have a good night. And this, yeah, I can see it. And I get why both offenses are in this lineup. I have nothing wrong with this lineup. I think that I'll play some Colorado and Cincinnati together. And maybe playing them together makes sense. No complaints about this lineup. Probably not my favorite. Also, two chalky pitchers. I like it. Don't love it.
Okay. Yeah. We've got this one. It's 167% ownership. Fairly chalky. I'm surprised that it's not. I thought it was going to be further to the left here on the ownership scale, but apparently you can make some very, very chalky lineups on this slate. How did Matt McLean end up doing last night? Do you remember off the top of your head? I didn't even.
Yeah, he was solid. He put up like 11 points. He
Okay.
doubled in his second at bat. He hustled out a double. And this is another one, I know we like to talk about these type of things where I mentioned ownership as in terms of high stakes and lower dollar. And lowered in the $15 yesterday, I looked at this before the show. McLean came in at about 30%. Nice ownership. In the 777, or it might have been, it was 777 last night. He came in 45% owned. So this kind of shows you, people in high stakes were more willing to play him. I actually did play him a bunch. I didn't use a ton of Cincinnati, but he really helped fill out lineups. And it was just a play like Adam mentioned on the show. He should have been probably, 3K-ish. I'd actually argue he should have been closer to 4K, hitting second in cores in that lineup. Right. So, you know what I mean? Just for the spot that he's in. So almost a no-brainer. And the biggest point for not playing a guy like that is what you said yesterday, the opportunity cost. I think as far as projections and point per dollar, he's going to be the best play on the slate again tonight.
Yeah. All right. And so we got him in that first lineup, which I discarded that one because it was just too high owned, I think, for us. This one's just 128% cumulative ownership here. We've got Kershaw and Verlander, so obviously two very good pitchers. This is still a 5-3 stack in cores, but we got the 5 is the Colorado side, so they're fairly chalky. But then we get a really contrarian Arizona, 3% owned Ahmed, under 1% owned Dominic Fletcher. What do you think of this one, Matt?
The known lefty masher, Nick Ahmed. Always like him against the lefty. I like this lineup significantly more than the other one. I like the 5-man Colorado stack here. They're getting love, but they're actually coming in with less ownership than their top stack percentage would let on. And they're actually coming in with less ownership than Cincinnati. So as of right now, as of this writing, I like Colorado significantly more than Cincinnati. Now, it's one of those things I've heard you talk about a lot. Like, will people look at that ownership and then will that change the ownership?
Right.
But you can't really fall into that, prophecy, because like then it's like,
Right.
well, people look at that, or you know what I mean? How often can you keep doing that? From the numbers I'm looking at here, I really like the Colorado stack. I also think the Arizona stack's going under owned. And you've got guys like Rivera and Ahmed that are cheap, that have done really, really well against lefties for their entire careers.
Yep. That's a really, I like this lineup a lot better than the other one as well, and that's a great point that you can get Ahmed in there. Paul Mees, it says one simple thing no website tracks is players' salary, daily change up or down, season highs and lows, rank amongst position would be helpful. Each slate is different. Yeah, I know. Greg Ehrenberg kind of tracks that a little bit. You think that are there sites that actually track that specifically?
Yeah, there's they don't. I know that like the pricing history comes up a little bit, and also like I don't know how far back you want to go, but as we've mentioned before, I'm a hand builder and I do mostly everything on my phone. A lot of that history is in there on the app, so not really sure on the computer, but a lot of the pricing history is in there. Now, if you want to go years back, etc., I'm not sure where you can find that.
Yeah, I mean, in Fantasy Cruncher, you can actually take a look at how different players have been priced in the past. So you can look through game logs for years in the past. So you can do that. It doesn't like tell you just what the peak was for this player's salary or the low was for their salary. It doesn't tell you that, but you can look it up in Fantasy Cruncher. That's the only
I think
place
that matters a lot more in a sport like NBA where projections matter. And
yeah,
MLB pricing is almost, I don't want to say irrelevant, but if you get a guy, and I've heard Adam mention this a lot, if you get a guy like if Chris Bryant homers twice tonight, doesn't matter if he was 5,100 or 7,100. You needed him in your lineup.
Yep, no, that's a good point. Excuse me. SMP says you have an interesting pivot in Tovar in Coors-centric lineups. If he bats second against a lefty, that'd be an easy way to get different in those sorts of lineups. Yeah, well, I guess we can talk about that a little bit. All right, so I like this lineup. I'm going to save this one. We'll take a look at one more. Again, guys, it's still just $9. Even without the 50% off, you're still getting this for just $9 when you sign up. Actually, let me double check while we're. Can you see this lineup? Can you give it a peek over? Tell us what you think of this lineup while I go find a link and make sure that I'm not missing another deal of some sort.
Surely. So this one we have no Cincinnati, so no McLean here. We do get that Tovar pivot. He's also not expensive. He's only 3,100. I like him a lot if you're stacking Colorado, especially like you mentioned, more than likely hitting second against the lefty tonight. You've got the chalky Seattle guys in here. Julio Rodriguez and Cal Raleigh, two guys I never mind getting to. Colton Wong, certainly not excited about him. He's had a really, really rough start to the year. He's very cheap though, so I get that. Pitching looks good to me. I love Wheeler here. I like Javier. So this is a fine lineup. I'd probably put this in the middle for me. I like the lineup we just did the best, then this one, then the first one.
Yep. All right. I was not even looking at it because I was finding the link. I posted the link for the deal that we had going on. I know he said he was going to turn it off today. Maybe it's midnight tonight that it's actually up. I don't know what time it is. So you could at least try the link that I just put in chat if you want to try to get 50% off. I'm not sure if it'll work. But at the worst case scenario, you're paying $9 for a premium product that is, again, filtered out all of the bad lineups for you. Every lineup that you get in Lineup Generator has been vetted by the Stokastic team, by some of the best DFS players in the world have vetted these, and you're only getting lineups that are plus EV over the long term in Lineup Generator. So we talk about like, do we like this lineup? Do we dislike this lineup? I mean, the answer is like all of these are good.
It doesn't matter.
Right.
It doesn't matter.
Lineups. Yeah.
It doesn't matter what we personally feel like. They're good for talking points, and especially because there's no limit to the amount of lineups you can push out. So you don't have to play every single lineup. That said, this all kind of goes back to what we talked about before the show. The tools at Stokastic are so far and away the best in the industry. You're doing yourself a disservice if you're not signed up.
And in case you didn't hear Matt say that, we talked about this before the show. We weren't just trying to sell. This is something that we both believe. We were talking about before the show. That
I can personally vouch for using Stokastic's tools. Whenever I started years ago, changed the level of my game drastically.
Yep. Me too. I mean, it was definitely, I got much better once I discovered Stokastic. The tools, the analysis also, I think is top notch. Everything about this team is obviously, I'm a huge fan.
It's almost one of those things like you don't know what you don't know. So people that don't know, that haven't experienced it, don't know.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. So yeah, check it out. Again, I put the link in there. You could see if that baseball for all is still working today. But worst case scenario, you're paying $9 for a fantastic premium tool that is brand new last week. I think you're really going to like it. You should check this out. But Matt, we should probably move on because we do still have half of the slate to get through. The next game that we have on here is Cleveland at Chicago White Sox. We got Shane Bieber on the mound for the Guardians, your Guardians, if I remember correctly. Lance Lynn on the mound for the Sox. Any interest in these pitchers?
Yeah, interested in Bieber here. Don't love him. He's right behind Montgomery as far as top two pitchers go. 8.8% chance of being the top two pitcher, 3.5% ownership. He's not the Shane Bieber of old, of yesteryear, if you will. Guy that was, the ace of Cleveland staff for years. Kind of took the reins from Corey Kluber. He's not that guy, but he's in a pretty good spot here against the White Sox. White Sox lineup isn't anything special. I don't feel great about Bieber here, but he's in the mix of pitchers that are in play for me. Probably a spot where I don't use a ton of Bieber, but I also don't use a lot of White Sox against him. I'd rather get the Bieber than Chicago.
Okay. And what about, tell me about your level of interest in the bats.
I have some interest in Cleveland's bats here. This is a team that really struggles to hit for power, so that's a big hamper when it comes to DFS. That said, Lance Lynn is a guy who loves giving up home runs. I think you want to take a look at a couple lefties here. Two guys I'm looking hard at that I like a lot, a little mini stack. Jose Ramirez, no surprise there. He's cheap today, only 5,200. Switch hitter, gets to bat from the left side against Lynn, where he's really struggled. And then Josh Naylor started off the year really slowly, has homered in the 8th inning or later in 3 straight games. Red hot right now. He's only 3,300. Profiles really, really well against Lynn. I think you can look at Cleveland as a full stack, but I kind of like the mini stack more. Josh Bell, if you want to use him instead of Naylor. I prefer Naylor. But yeah, I'm interested in a couple Cleveland bats. Not the top stack on the board, but I think they provide nice upside here.
Definitely. All right. And then how would you rank the 4 sides of the game?
Bieber, Cleveland, White Sox, Lynn. Bieber, Cleveland, Lynn, White Sox, I guess, because Cleveland's offense isn't that great.
Elvin Dimery asks, what is the most helpful tool in MLB? I'm going to give my opinion. The one that I use the most is top stacks tool is the tool that I
easily.
Yeah. I mean, top pitchers tool is
in
nice,
any sport. There's a lot of good tools. They're all really good, but the top stack tool in MLB, the boomer bust tool in NBA, the similar tools that are there for the NFL, those are the top tools, in my opinion, that really, really help you analyze the slate from a different angle.
Yeah. So for MLB, would you agree? I think that if I had to choose just one between top stacks or top pitchers, I'm taking top stacks, or top batters. I would take top stacks of those 3. I mean, they all have their value, but like pitchers, you're generally just playing the best pitchers out there, and bats, right. Like you kind of know who the best bats are in general. So I think that the top stacks will, if I decide to choose one, although lineup generator, like if you are new to MLB DFS, I would say lineup generator probably even more valuable than top stacks, just because you can, you make good lineups as you're learning how to play.
I think for me personally, again, it's a personal preference. The top stack tool for MLB and the NBA boom bust tool are the 2 best tools in the DFS industry anywhere.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, boom bust. I reference it all the time. Love the boom bust as well. Yeah. So, but for MLB, yeah, I think that my answer would probably be top stacks. Sounds like Matt is on the same page as me there. All right. How would you rank the 4 sides of this Cleveland-Chicago game?
I did already, but I will try to rank them again. I will go. I'll go Bieber, Cleveland. Yeah, Cleveland, Bieber, and then I switched these up, actually. I'll go Lynn and then the White Sox. Not much interest in either part of the Chicago.
All right. Well, you're getting the full Adam experience of me not listening to you, testing you, making you re-rank.
I feel right. I feel like I'm accepted now.
Oh, yeah, totally 100% accepted. All right. Now we are up to the Coors game. We've got Brandon Williamson on the mound for the Reds, Chase Anderson for the Rockies. You playing any pitchers in Coors today, Matt?
No, this isn't even one where like you can think about it, where you've got good pitchers that are just in a bad spot. These pitchers are not playable, even if they were playing in Oakland.
Okay, well that's a strong answer there. So you've already alluded to it. Your thoughts on this game in general, but expound on your interest in the bats here.
So I've heard you guys talk about this recently. It's almost like the Coors games are the quickest to talk about because the bats are obviously in great spots. You're looking at the number 1 and 2 teams in terms of top stack percentage. Colorado's coming in with a 14.6% chance, getting 13.5% ownership. Cincinnati slightly lower top stack percentage, slightly higher ownership. Based on that alone, I like the Colorado side more. I do think that you're going to see both sides just get a lot of love, especially in higher dollar. You're going to see those 2 teams in Seattle take up a lot of ownership. And I get it. This is one where I find it harder to fade this game. Like if you're just making a hard line in the sand, you want to fade, either Seattle or one of the teams in cores. I find it easier to fade Seattle personally. Pavetta's had success before. It's still not Coors Field. That said, Seattle's offense is a lot better than Cincinnati's or Colorado. So this is not the kind of conundrum on this slate. You've got Coors Field, hitting weather, 2 crappy pitchers. Neither offense is an offense you're like excited about getting to, though. So I will use some Colorado and Cincinnati here, but this is not a spot where I'm just going to like jam them all over, because I think too many people are going to do that.
Are you opposed to having a full-on game stack where you're just playing eight
No.
bats from this game? You're not opposed to it?
Not at all. That was what the first lineup was. It looked like. I wouldn't do that on purpose. But if Colorado and Cincinnati are 2 stacks that I'm going heavy on tonight, then I think that would naturally happen. And depending on how the positions play out, I guess would be more important and to whether that would work or not.
Okay. All right. I guess, is it going to be easy for you to rank the 4 sides of this game? I guess you have a choice.
Yeah.
A decision point between the stacks here.
I like Colorado more, just from a tournament perspective, getting a little bit less.
Okay.
I like them against a lefty here. So I think it's Colorado, Cincinnati, and then the 2 pitchers aren't even in consideration for me. If I were playing 150, I would get to 0 of them.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. You probably should get to 0 of them. So, all right. Yeah, as you said, easy to get through that one because you know exactly what to do. You know what you're getting with the Coors game. All right, we'll move on to Arizona at Oakland. Tommy Henry on the mound for the D-backs. Kyle Muller for the A's. Any interest in these pitchers, Matt?
No interest in either of these pitchers. You have Tommy Henry against Oakland, so insert pitcher against Oakland here. I know Martin Perez, for example, last week was popular. This is a different situation. Tommy Henry is not viable here. Even in a good matchup, there's just too many other good pitchers on the slate that you expect to actually pitch well for me to want to, put my hard-earned dollars on Tommy Henry.
Any interest in the bats then?
Yeah, I think you got to have interest, especially in Arizona. Similar to last night, they're 4th in top stack percentage, 7.3% chance of being the top stack, only 6.9% chance, only 6.9% ownership, excuse me. And this is a team that has guys that can really, really hit lefties well. Lourdes Gurriel has been on a tear recently. He profiles really well in this spot. Christian Walker, we talked about Nick Ahmed, Emmanuel Rivera. Arizona looks good here. I think they're, one of the best stacks on the board as far as ownership, probability, all that, tied together. Arizona looks very, very good here. And I think Oakland's actually one of the few teams that's coming in a little bit over-owned, 2.3% chance to be in the top stack, 3.5% ownership. Nothing drastic there. They're really cheap, though, facing a crappy pitcher in Tommy Henry. So I get it. I get using guys like Estuary Ruiz. Brett Rooker has been good against lefties. I could see using a couple Oakland bats, but as far as stacks go, I like Arizona a lot better.
Okay. And then how would you rank the 4 sides of the game?
Arizona, Oakland, I guess Henry, and then Mueller.
Elvin followed up with it because he asked us about what was our favorite tool. We both said the top stack. So he said, so then whoever has the highest leverage, I go with that stack. It's not that simple for me. Like you don't just automatically go with the highest leverage stack. I've talked about this on shows before where people I used to ask I would be asked by Eric or Greg if you could just play one stack, which stack would you choose? And for me, it was usually the highest projected lineup, highest projected in terms of top stack odds that had positive leverage was often where I ended up going with my favorite stack in a single entry. That's not always the case, but it just happened to be. I was like, oh yeah, I often go there because you want a stack that has like real odds of success as well, and then positive leverage is great. So it's not quite as simple as just going with the top leverage stack. Did you have a follow up, Matt? Thoughts on how you choose your your stacks when you're hand building?
Yeah, I agree with everything you just said. For me, it's like there's nuance in everything, right? You don't just want to say like, oh, this team is the top leverage, I'm going to use them every single day. You're putting yourself in a box for no reason. So I don't think that's a bad thing to look for as a part of your process. I don't think that's what you want to just say is the end all be all, personally.
But you usually are like the top positive leverage stack. It's usually going to be a good stack, like a stack that is, it's usually going to be a
It is,
positive
but for
EV stack.
example, like tonight, Tampa is the top leverage stack. Like, good luck just like building everything out with Tampa. They're really expensive and they're facing Verlander. So could it
Right.
work out? Sure, but I think you have to pick your spots.
Yeah, and that's something we also talk about is like oftentimes it'll be like the top leverage stack has a 3% chance of being the top, or even lower. So maybe not lower if it's a top leverage, but sometimes it'll be like 3% chance of being the top stack at 0.5% ownership. So it's like, okay, you have 2.5% leverage there, but then it's also like that's going to hit like once a month, and it's just can you wait for that one time to
Yeah.
hit? Do you have the bankroll for
Can
that?
you sustain that? Exactly.
Right.
Can you sustain a month of playing before you hit that? And then also, are you putting yourself in a position when that team hits that you're actually winning? I will say, speaking of stack score, before we move on to the next game, Colorado and Cincinnati are crushing the stack score. I mean, both teams have a 14, basically the same stack score, and no other team is over 10. So based on that, it's hard to fade Coors here.
Right, when they're just in such great spots against these pitchers, it's a particularly juicy course. I mean, we had somebody in chat yesterday saying that they always fade Coors. This is going to be a spot where it's like more difficult to fade Coors if that is a stance that you're trying to take.
And I get that, and I know you guys were talking about this yesterday, Adam specifically. It's not about I fade Coors always. It's if you want to say you're not going to play the most overowned team, when they're overowned. I get that, but that should be separate from Coors or not. I think people look, try too hard to make these rules for absolutely no reason.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's kind of a beginner mistake to some extent, trying to, because I think beginners are more likely to be like, okay, I'm just trying to figure out how to make good lineups. I need to like, what are the rules that I need to follow to set good lineups? And it's hard because it is a nuanced game. So there isn't just, you can't just like set, this is my rule for how I'm making lineups. I do this every day. It really is like, you need to be thinking about it, each slate a little bit differently. So I don't think it's a good idea to set hard and fast rules like that. All right.
Amen.
Kansas City at San Diego. We've got Brady Singer on the mound for the Royals, Seth Lugo for the Padres. Any interest in these pitchers, Matt?
I'll keep this quick because I know we got a couple games to go through. Interested in Lugo, not really interested in Singer. Singer struggled this year and not the spot I want to, pick on San Diego bats. I think the Padres are much more in play than Singer here. Lugo looks like a solid mid-tier pitcher here, on a slate with a bunch of really good pitching options.
Okay. How much interest?
The thing I'll say about Lugo is he's cheap. Lugo's cheap at 8K and a pretty good matchup. We saw what Michael Wacha did last night. So I have no problem with anyone that wants to play Lugo here. He's certainly on my short list in the mix. As far as bats go, no interest in Kansas City, just not the slate for it. San Diego is always in play, the presence of guys in their lineup. We'll see if Machado plays tonight after leaving early last night. X-rays came back negative, so we're hopeful there. Anytime you got a team with Tatis, Soto, Machado, Bogarts, they're in play. They have not been great to start this year. Maybe a matchup with Brady Singer is what they need to turn it around. I'm interested in San Diego here. Coming in with a 3.8% chance to be in the top stack, 4.3% ownership. Yeah, if I'm making 10 lineups tonight, I might use them a little bit.
I feel like that's when, Adam talks about like the Dodgers, the Rays, and then of course he says the Orioles. I think of the Pods as being in that kind of like the Pods are kind of in that class of like, it's probably a good idea usually to have one pod stack.
I agree, but this year they necessarily haven't been that. For me, I think those three teams would be, yeah, you're right though. I think, Houston used to be in that mix.
Toronto.
Yeah, I have no argument to that actually. Toronto for sure. Seems like Toronto and San Diego have both not had as good a years offensively as you would have thought.
Yeah. But I guess it comes out, you can't actually just play all of these every day. Like we're saying, like I always want to have one Dodgers. Like we're naming off 6 teams. Like, is everybody playing 6 entries? It might not be your best option if you're not playing.
Also, if you're making 6 entries, this is another point for another show maybe, but you don't necessarily want to use 6 different stacks if you're making 6 entries.
Right. Not necessarily. It's how much risk tolerance you have. We've talked about it a little bit before, but as you said, yeah, we do have a couple games left to get through here. First of all, you didn't rank the 4 sides of this Kansas City San Diego game. Can you do that for me?
Padres, Lugo, Royal, Singer.
All right, and we have 2 more games. Wait, I had one question that I wanted to touch on. Paul me asked, how much do you all adjust when a big piece of a lineup you were stacking and have been building around has a day off? Happens often. Do you change the stack or work with the value? So let's say Fernando Tatis is out today. I guess we don't need examples. Do you have an answer for that, Matt? How much do you adjust?
I personally don't really care. One player being out really doesn't change much for me. So I personally don't care. If I like the stack, I'm going to continue to ride with them, even with one guy out. It's more for me like the other side of that. If a big bat is out of the lineup, it might make me boost the pitcher a little bit more.
Okay, so let's go with the example that I gave of Tatis. Tatis, is he only shortstop eligible, or
he's only outfield eligible now?
Oh, that's right. I'm trying to think of who's a better example. Somebody who's only eligible at we can keep it anyway. So if you're going off of, then obviously you got to get Tatis out of your lineup. Would you then be inclined to just sub him out for a one-off, or would you go down to like a $3,500 bat in the outfield for the Padres?
That's a great question. Depends on how many lineups you have. For me, I'm probably going to redo my lineup and do a different type of stack depending on how many games are left on the slate. This is a problem when you've got like late lineups to come out and guys aren't in the lineup that you expect to be in there because the pivots aren't necessarily there. For me, however, and this is how I've played for years, when I'm using a stack, I will use every single player in that lineup at least once. So I will step not in each lineup, obviously, but throughout my lineups, one guy, that guy will be in at least one lineup, correlated with other guys in that lineup. So for me, if a Tatis is out and that lineup's already built and the lineup looks completely different, I'm probably changing a few pieces.
Okay. Perfect. I think that is a good lineup there. Like you don't necessarily always, but if it's going to change the whole like complexion of your lineup, the projection of your lineup, then you might start thinking about like, okay, maybe I need to redo it. If it is a big player like Tatis, where it's like, all right, the sub isn't going to live up to him. All right, how would you rank the 4 sides? Did we already do that?
I did, but okay. I'll do it quickly again. Padres, Lugo, Royals, Singer.
I appreciate that you're always willing to do it again because I clearly wasn't listening. So you got to remind me what you said. Okay. 2 final games on the slate. We've got Philadelphia at San Francisco, Zach Wheeler on the mound for the Phillies, Alex Cobb for the Giants. Any interest in these pitchers, Matt?
Yeah, a lot of interest in the pitchers, especially Wheeler. Probably my favorite pitcher on the slate. I don't love picking on San Francisco. This is a lineup with a bunch of good left-handed hitters. They'll probably sit all their righties here because this is a team that likes to pinch hit a lot. So it's not the greatest spot in the world for Wheeler. However, he's really cheap at 9,200. Great ballpark upgrade going to San Francisco at night. I just think the price tag is off here. So if I had to pick one pitcher on this slate that I was going to ride or die with, it'd be Wheeler. I'm a big Wheeler fan anyways. He's a guy I've used to a ton of success, in past DFS seasons. So no problem, calling him out as my top pitcher on the slate. And then Alex Cobb has been good this year. Tougher spot for him. I respect this Philly lineup more with the power they have. He is 8,700, so similarly priced. He's having a good year though, averaging close to 20 DK points per game. I have no problems with Cobb and not a guy I really want to pick on. I just prefer Wheeler at basically the same price point.
Okay. All right. I just realized that we do have another show coming on. We've got the DraftKings the Rainmakers PGA show coming up after this one with Eric. So we still got 24 minutes. So we're still making just fine time here, Matt. We can spend, tell me about your level of interest in the bats in this game.
Not a lot. San Fran, no thanks against Wheeler. Again, if you want to pick out like a Conforto or whomever as a one-off, do your thing, but not a spot I'm looking to target. And then basically the same with Philly. I do respect Wheeler more than Cobb, but ballpark issues, the Philly lineup is expensive with the guys you want to get to. So not a spot I'm going to be targeting. I like the pitchers as, the overwhelming theme of this game.
All right. And then tell me, can you rank the 4 sides of it?
Wheeler, Cobb, Philly, San Fran.
Perfect. All right. We do have one more slate to get to. Of course, we do, though, still want to tell you guys that we have this BetMGM deal still going on. So if you live in a state where BetMGM is available to you and you haven't yet signed up, you should probably sign up now using the link in the description of this video or promo code Platinum Sub, because if you sign up using the promo code Platinum Sub, you're going to get 1 free month of Stokastic Plus Platinum and your first bet covered up to $1,000 paid back in bet credits when you sign up. Make a deposit and make your first paid wager at BetMGM. So again, it's whatever bet you make, the amount that you make for your first bet is going to be covered up to $1,000. So you can make $1,000 bet. If you lose that bet, you're going to get $1,000 back in bet credits. Phenomenal deal there. And then on top of it, you get a free month of Stokastic Plus Platinum. We've been talking about the tools, best tools in the business. It's $120 value for that month. So check it out if you have that available to you. The legal age for gambling in most states is 21 plus. And if you or someone you know has a gambling problem, call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. All right. One final game on the slate. But before we do, I just want to remind you guys, please do like the video if you haven't already. For Matt's first live show with me. So our first time doing a show together. Hopefully we'll do more in the future. But give us a like, because I think Matt's giving you some great analysis here. So we would appreciate a like here. Final game of the slate, Matt. We've got the Twins at the Dodgers. Bailey Ober on the mound for the Twins. Clayton Kershaw for the Dodgers. Starting with the pitchers. Any interest there, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, Kershaw's coming in as the top projected pitcher on the slate, #1 in top 2 pitcher percentage. Anytime he's on a slate, you're going to have interest here. He's expensive at $11K. He's coming off a dominant start last time out in Milwaukee. So Kershaw's mother died on Saturday, the day before Mother's Day, and I think he's going on the bereavement list right after this game. So you could look at that a couple ways. More realistically, we don't know how to look at that. You could certainly look at that as a get-up spot where he's going to go out and pitch for his mom. You could say, well, he's going to be distracted. The truth of the matter is it's probably somewhere in the middle, and we just don't know. I like Kershaw here. I don't think he's a must. Minnesota is not a lineup I feel the necessity to pick on, and Kershaw's expensive here. So he's in the mix for me. I certainly understand why he's pulling ownership, getting about 25% as of right now. If I were building one lineup right now, he would not be in it. But that's no indictment on Kershaw himself. That's just because I like Wheeler, I like Gausman, I like Verlander. It kind of goes to what I said at the beginning of the show, though. You've got a lot of good pitchers in tougher spots, and they all kind of clump together, at least for me.
Okay. I'm seeing a lot of discussion about FanDuel. Do you play on FanDuel as well, Matt?
I do play on FanDuel some, not nearly as much as DK. I will say, if there's a slate where I love one pitcher, but really don't like any of the other pitchers, that's a slate where I'll try to play on FanDuel.
Yeah.
FanDuel's not nearly as aesthetically pleasing for me. Their contests usually stink. I don't like much of FanDuel, but it's also another place to make money, so I dabble.
I actually don't mind the aesthetics. So some of the functionality
really?
I find easier for actually as a hand builder. For me, I find it easier if I've reserved 5 lineups, or maybe my issue is that I put real lineups in there, so they're not just reserved. But I find it harder. On FanDuel, I find it easy to adjust the lineup, and then it'll come off your list of your grouping of all of these entries have the same lineup, and it's just easier for me if I'm hand building to do on FanDuel than DraftKings. Maybe I
know what you're saying there.
Yeah,
I get that point. I have no arguments there.
And I also do. I think that the field is softer. I have not been playing FanDuel just because they don't have as big of prize pools, but I do think the field tends to be softer on FanDuel.
I think the fields for me, when I'm playing the higher dollar tournaments, I think it's similar. You've got guys.
Sure.
A lot of the field is the same. Yeah, a lot of the field is the same guys, intertwined. And then you'll have a couple guys that really, are DraftKings only, a couple that are really only FanDuel only, all pretty sharp though. So tough fields. I do agree though, on the smaller entry stuff, the contests aren't as good, but the field is less sharp.
Yeah. Yep. All right. Final bats. Any interest in the Twins or Dodgers bat?
I mean, it's the Dodgers, right? Ober's been good. He's a guy with a good arm, but it's the Dodgers. So they just got after Pablo Lopez last night. This is one of the best offenses in baseball, going from Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman, Will Smith, Max Muncy's on fire right now. The top of the lineup is where you want to get to. They're not a spot where I'm going to plant my flag here. I respect Ober, not a great ballpark. There's other offenses I like a lot. They're really expensive. That said, I like the pendulum Adam mentioned yesterday. Are the Dodgers facing a bad pitcher? Are they popular? Or are the Dodgers facing a bad pitcher? Use them. Are the Dodgers facing a good pitcher? Are they popular? No, use them. So
Right.
the Dodgers aren't playing no matter what situation they're in, and tonight is no different.
Yep. All right. So they're playable, but it's not like a great spot for them. How would you rank the four sides of this game?
Kershaw number 1, Dodgers number 2. I'm going to say Twins 3, Ober 4. I could see getting to a couple Twins bats like Byron Buxton over using a guy like Ober. I mean, to use an Ober on this slate takes some serious balls. Let's just say that.
Paul B says best thing about FanDuel is Kay Adams. I didn't know Kay Adams was associated with FanDuel. I don't know what I thought she was associated with, but I did not realize that she was with
I think
FanDuel.
she's on the FanDuel TV, like the new FanDuel TV.
Okay. All right. I guess I've never used the FanDuel TV.
Neither have I.
All right. So we've reached the end of the game by game breakdown, Matt. So because you watch the shows, so you know what we do now. We're going to start with if you were playing 3 entries, and I'm requiring you to play 3 different stacks, Matt. I know you said you don't need to. If you are playing 3, you can play 3 of the same stack, but I'm saying it's in the rules of this game. They make you play 3 different stacks. Which 3 stacks are you going to?
Colorado, Texas, and we'll go St. Louis.
Perfect. 3 favorite pitchers.
Gausman, Wheeler, Montgomery.
And then, as always, we're going to do a home run pick. Are you going to cheat like me and use the top batters tool, or do you have, off the top of your head, you have an idea?
I think you said it yesterday. You're like, who do you want to hit a homer? That's who you choose, right? Like, just because.
I mean, I do.
Was it you who said it?
It was me. No, that's not what I do. Oh, that was maybe Greg. Greg and I on Live Before Lock. He was like,
that's what you were telling Greg. Yes.
Yeah. So yesterday I chose Buxton because he happened to be at the top of the home run odds, and of course I wanted to because he is on the Twins, but not always. I'm not always just picking. Looks like the top batters tool might not be updated. Maybe I'll have to refresh this. So I might not be able to cheat today. Let me see. All right, last updated 1 minute ago. So let me maybe they did it just for me. They knew this was coming. They're like, Neil is going to want to cheat to do his home run pick. Let's see. No, it looks like it's still not updated. Oh yeah, and the one rule we have, Matt, as you might know, is no course. Yep.
I would never. I think that would be if I ever chose a course hitter for this. I mean, I don't deserve to ever come back on video. So I'm gonna go with my hometown hero. Give me Jose Ramirez.
Jose Ramirez for you. Okay. All right, let me see. I'm going to go. I'm going to go Jared Kelenic for the home run pick.
I like that.
Yeah, probably not that close to the top of the board, but he's in Fenway, opposite-handed pitcher facing him. So I'll go off the board with Jared Kelenic. All right, Matt. So it's a great job today, by the way. Really, really enjoyed doing the show with you. Got a ton of positive feedback. Arnold Lane says, thanks, gents. Great job filling in for Adam. Matt says a lot of nice things. Appreciate you, Arnold, always being very positive. But yeah, great job today, Matt. Do you have any final thoughts for the people?
Just thanks, guys. And thank you to you, Neil. Thanks for leading the way. Thanks for welcoming me. Hopefully we do more of these in the soon future. And until then, thanks a lot, guys.
Yeah, I hope that we get to do more shows together. This was really fun to do. And of course, it's summer months. I'm guessing it's going to be kind of quiet. People are going to be going on vacations. So maybe you'll be able to, we'll be able to use you a little bit more if you're interested in doing more shows. I hope you are, because this is a fun show. Went really smoothly. And thank you guys for watching, sticking with us. Please do like the video. Again, if you haven't yet liked the video, please do like the video. We really appreciate it. In 15 minutes, you'll be able to find the DraftKings Rainmakers PGA show is in 15 minutes. So if you stick around the channel for that, that's coming up. We also have MLB Live Before Lock tonight. That's going to be me and Josh, I believe. And then NBA Live Before Lock as well. I don't know if Adam's back for that one, but stick around the channel. A lot of great content today. We will talk to you guys later.